This is the King of Fighters 13, aka the best KoF. Although 2002 Unlimited Match and 98 are both very popular. Although the King of Fighters 15 comes out soon and looks okay. Mechanically, the King of Fighters 14 would probably be more similar to 15 than 13, but KoF 14 sucks. Not as bad as KoF 12, but it still sucks. Now, I already have a fairly complete series of tutorials in this game, but they're all really old and unedited. They're literally stream archives. So I'm starting from scratch. There are 3 versions of this game, and the one that you should be getting is the Steam version, because the Steam version is the most updated. If you're playing on console, you're playing an old version with worse netcode and are missing a couple of bug fixes. Although, to be fair, there is no version of this game with good netcode. Maybe one day. So just get the Steam edition and you'll be fine. In the options menu, before you start playing, make sure that under graphics options, you have the frame rate set to fixed. This should theoretically lock your game to 60 FPS. Although if you're still having problems, you can right click to go into your game properties, and under launch options, you can type -R, and that should force the game to run at 60 FPS. This game's tutorial mode is basically useless. There's the basic system, which kind of teaches you how KoF games work, and then there's the gauge tutorial, which kind of teaches you how the new mechanics to 13 work, but they don't do a very good job. If I had to give a brief overview of what this game is, I would say that KoF is a very fast-paced fighting game that rewards aggression and does not reward keep away or defensive play. Defense in KoF is anti-aggression, which is to say you counter your opponent's offense with the ultimate goal of getting your own offense. The game is fast-paced, but not necessarily execution-heavy. A lot of people will try to claim this is like the hardest fighting game in the world, but I highly disagree. I already have a video on that you can watch. Although it's definitely not easy to play, especially when compared alongside modern fighting games like Street Fighter V. There are 33 playable characters, although you have to unlock some of them. And there are 3 red versions of characters, which you can access by pressing the select button on the characters Kyo, Iori, and Takuma. And you need to pick 3 of them to form a team with no duplicates, so you cannot have Kyo and Red Kyo both on the same team. This game has a lot of really powerful universal mechanics, which means that at a beginner and even an intermediate level, your character choice is completely irrelevant to how well you do, so just pick who you like. Now, I know you'll ask, who are the good beginner characters anyway, so I'll recommend Daimon, Shenwu, regular Iori, not the red name Iori, Billy Kane, and Rolf. Those would be my top 5. But again, I reiterate, every character ends up playing very similarly, so it really does not matter. If you specifically like to throw projectiles, there are 3 really good projectile throwing characters, which are Kenso, Athena, and King. Although these are KoF fireballs, which means, again, they're a means to an end, and that end is your own offense. There is no character who can just sit at full screen and throw fireballs and win that way. It's just not gonna happen. There are a couple of weirdos, Raiden in particular, that end up playing a little bit differently from most characters, but let's be honest, no one plays Raiden. Basic movement always begins with walking. You can hold left or right to walk, although you really don't see walking too much in this game, because you can double tap forward to run forward, and runs are cancelable on any frame, including the first frame, into attacks or jumps. And backdashes are airborne on frame 1, but not invincible. There are 4 main attack buttons: light punch, light kick, heavy punch, and heavy kick. In that order, I will be calling them A, B, C, and D, and you can press A plus B to do a roll, or hold back when pressing roll to do a backward roll. And rolls are invincible to strike attacks immediately on frame 1, although they have a long recovery which can be punished. Also, the entire duration of the roll is vulnerable to throws. You have 3 jumps: up left, and up right. But if you just barely tap it and then release it, you get a short hop, which is in the air for much less time, but doesn't go quite as far. This is the main reason why this game has really good offense, is because you can just jump in. If you tap down before jumping, you get a super jump. In KoF 13, super jumps don't have any extra height, they just go further horizontally. And the same can be applied for hops. If you tap down and then do a hop, you get a hyper hop. This is something that you should be practicing a lot when you first get the game. Because you have so many ways of approaching, you have running, hopping, jumping, super jumping, and hyper hopping, it's very difficult to anti-air in this game. If you think of a game like Street Fighter, it's literally just a reaction time test. But in this game, it's just not humanly possible to react to every single jump with an anti-air. If you run and then hop, it'll automatically become a hyper hop. And if you run and then jump, it'll automatically become a super jump. And if you roll, your roll will go a little bit further. This can make certain roll setups quite ambiguous. If I just roll normally, I end up in front, but if I do a dash roll, even if I dash for 1 frame, I go a lot further and cross up. Blocking in this game is pretty standard. You hold back or diagonally down back to block, and you cannot block while in the air. Some attacks must be crouch blocked. We call those low attacks, and some attacks must be stand blocked. We call those overhead attacks, although most attacks can be blocked in either direction. Although notice below the health bar there is the guard gauge, which goes down as you block attacks, and if it breaks, I get a full combo. Once again, the 4 attack buttons are A, B, C, and D, and you can press C plus D to get a CD or a blowback, which is effectively a 5th normal attack that knocks the opponent away. You don't have a crouching blowback, but you do have a jumping blowback. In the command list, you'll also find command moves, which are done by holding a direction and then doing a button press. And you also have proximity normals, which are done by standing close to the opponent as opposed to far away. Next in the command list are the special moves, which require more complex motions to perform, but additionally deal a little bit of chip damage on block. For all of the special moves that have that little blue icon next to them, you can press both buttons to perform an EX version of the special move, although this will cost your energy meter, which I'll talk about later. And then lastly, we have your super specials and your Neo Max super specials. Also notice there's a blue icon next to that super, so there's also EX versions of super moves that cost even more meter. So this is a super, this is an EX super, and this is a Neo Max super. Chains follow a very simple hierarchy. Most light attacks can chain into each other freely. All normal attacks can chain into command normals. Most normals and command normals can be cancelled into special moves or supers. But without meter, you cannot cancel specials into supers. Keep in mind that basically all of these cancels work on hit, block, or whiff. To throw the opponent is left or right, plus C or D. The direction you hold does not matter, but the button you press does matter. If you press C, you'll do a forward throw, and if you press D, you'll do a back throw. Throws are unblockable but jumpable, and if both players throw each other at about the same time, a throw break occurs. Throws, I believe, are 1 frame in this game, but they are always techable even during the animations of your attacks. So even if I block an uppercut, I cannot punish with a throw because they can still tech it. Although specifically if you are thrown out of your roll, you cannot tech that throw. Now, if a normal throw fails, either because it's out of range or the opponent is not in a throwable state, like if they're jumping, you don't get a whiff animation, you just get the normal attack instead. Also, this game has a pretty long window of extended throw invincibility after block stun, which means that I cannot do tick throws. Tick throws are literally impossible in this game. And this happens off of knockdowns, off of hit stun, off of block stun, and off of air resets. Although specifically, if you do a quick rise and you do that little roll animation, then you do not get extended throw invincibility. And I can throw you immediately. This game does have command grabs. Unlike regular grabs, you can combo into the command grabs, and they cannot be throw teched at all, although they still follow the same rules of extended throw invincibility after block stun, knockdowns, and air resets. Let's talk about the meters. So the big yellow bar at the bottom is the energy meter. At the beginning of the game, it starts at 0, but it'll slowly fill as you and your opponent attack each other. Although I should note that if you block attacks, you build a ton of meter. You build almost double what the opponent is building. And once the meter fills, you get a stock, and you can spend that meter on various things. And for your first character on your team of 3, you can build up to 3 energy meter. Your second can build up to 4, and your last character can build up to 5 meters. EX special moves take 1 stock of energy. Super special moves take 1 stock of energy. EX super special moves take 2 stocks of energy, and you also have 2 different ways to spend a meter to guard cancel. If you press A plus B, you'll get a guard cancel roll. Unlike a regular roll, a guard cancel roll is completely safe. There's nothing that I can do to punish you. It is completely strike invincible and throw invincible for the entire duration. And just like a regular roll, you can choose to go forward or backward. Not only is this completely unpunishable by the opponent, but if their attack chains are predictable, you can get them to whiff big moves and punish them. The other guard cancel is by pressing C plus D when blocking, which gives you a guard cancel blowback. If it hits, it does like 1 point of damage and knocks the opponent full screen, but it is not the same as a regular blowback. It cannot be canceled into special moves, and if it's blocked, it's punishable, so it's not guaranteed by any means. If it does work, it guarantees the opponent's off of you, whereas guard cancel roll, I can't necessarily punish you, but you're still susceptible to being mixed up. And finally, just above the energy gauge is the Overdrive gauge. This gauge also starts at 0 and slowly builds as you attack the opponent, and it holds up to 2 stocks for all 3 of your characters. The primary use of this meter is drive cancels, which lets you perform 1 special move and then cancel it into another, and that costs 1 drive. Important to note is that you cannot perform drive cancels on block. You also have super cancels, which is performing a special move and canceling to super. This also costs 1 drive, but now it is possible on block. And your character's final attack is the Neomax Super Special move, which does a lot of damage, but costs 3 energy and both drives. But the last thing that there is to talk about when it comes to meters is HD mode, which is activated by pressing B plus C. It consumes both drives and turns the drive meter into a little timer, and for no additional cost, you can cancel into drive mode from any of your normal attacks, even normals that aren't usually cancelable. During HD mode, your drive cancels become HD cancels, which are basically the same, except now they're possible on block. And instead of taking an entire stock of drive meter, they just take a little bit of time off the timer. All of these things combined create the opportunity for the smallest of hits to become the biggest of hits. And during HD mode, your Neomax only costs 2 energy and whatever remaining duration there is, which means that even if you only have a sliver of time left, you can still perform a Neomax and it will only cost 2 energy. And that's it for the basics.